What a wild time in Canadian federal politics. Get your opinion right here. I know you can form a solid opinion of your own. You're a smart Canadian. Watch the Frontline Politics. Do not trust the legacy media. Watch things like this. Independent YouTubers that are trying to get the information out there. That's what we're doing here. Anyhow, let's check out the latest reason that we need to get rid of these liberal nut jobs. Like, they're taxing us and driving us into an economic disaster, trying to ruin our way of being. Anyhow, let's check out the latest thing that's been happening on Parliament Hill. Let's take a peek.
But the worst was yet to come. After Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine, the Liberals forced that desperate nation to renegotiate their free trade deal with Canada. The Liberal goal was to impose carbon tariffs on Ukraine if the Ukrainians did not increase their own carbon tax to match Canada.
And then you put out a statement saying nobody should work for free? You knew they were working for free. They told you in those meetings. Are you familiar with the term gaslighting? You just gaslit every flight attendant with that video. Or are you saying that when they told you they worked for free, they were lying to you?
What I said was that we would conduct a probe to understand.
Get into debates about issues like this, like the absolute decimation of the Canadian auto sector. What we find is that Liberal members love to get up and talk about programs and funding envelopes and all these other wonderful things that they're allegedly doing that are supposed to make things work. But let's talk about the facts. And the facts are pretty terrible. The facts are that we've now lost 3,000 jobs at the Brampton Assembly Plant. We've lost over 1,000 jobs at the Bright Drop Assembly Plant. Honda is losing approximately $900 per vehicle that they export to the United States. So who knows how long that's going to continue. And every time we bring this up, they get up and say, oh yeah, but there's a trade war, as if we're not aware of the fact there's a trade war. But the problem with the trade war is a couple of things. Number one, the Prime Minister has stood in this chamber and said, we have the best deal on auto in the world, as if he's proud of what's happened with the 10% tariffs on auto, because that's what he's saying. We have the best deal in the world. So it's either incredible ignorance or he actually doesn't care, because I've spoken with Unifor local presidents in the auto assembly industry. I've spoken with the Unifor Skilled Trades Council, and they've told me that the Canadian auto sector cannot survive at a 10% tariff. And yet we have a Prime Minister standing up in this chamber and bragging about how we have the lowest auto tariffs in the world. It's actually an unbelievable insult to every single auto worker in this country. And we know the results of what's happening with these tariffs: the layoffs in Brampton, the layoffs in Bright Drops, the layoffs in the auto sector in general. And you also have to then think of what this Prime Minister said just a little over a week ago when asked what the status of the negotiations with President Trump was. Who cares? That's boring. The same Prime Minister who is bragging about a 10% tariff that is decimating the Canadian auto industry.
Who cares? I mean, it's a detail. It's a detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters.
Now, if that's not bad enough, let's talk about some of these programs that they like to brag about, like the member from Guelph was just rhyming off as if there's some amazing development for the Canadian auto industry. They signed a contract with Stellantis specifically with respect to the Brampton Assembly Plant. In that agreement, they were going to give up to $1 billion for retooling of the Brampton Assembly Plant and another assembly plant. And as part of that, there was supposed to be a jobs guarantee. And we've heard the Minister of Industry say, I saw her at committee say, there's a jobs guarantee. We asked her what section of the contract. She couldn't say what section of the contract. And why couldn't she say that, Mr. Speaker? Because she didn't read the contract. And we also heard the industry ministry before that. He said he didn't read the contract. So we have ministers who are signing multi-billion-dollar contracts and not reading them. Well, let me tell you something a little bit about contracts, because I did actually go to law school, and I remember taking contracts in law school. If you have a jobs guarantee as they describe, how are they able to lay off 3,000 workers at the Stellantis plant in Brampton? Because at the time they signed the agreement with Stellantis in Brampton, there was a total of 8,000 Stellantis workers in Canada. So if they had a jobs guarantee as they suggest, does the job guarantee allow them to lay off almost 50% of the workforce?
Broken, Canada's broken, and Canada's broken because we're stupid, okay? Canada's broken because we're stupid.
And still get almost $1 billion. It's outrageous. The incompetence from these Liberals is stunning and staggering. No one gets held accountable. In fact, the minister who signed this contract that's allowed them to lay off all these workers when there's so-called a jobs guarantee was promoted to finance minister. And let's talk about the zero-emission vehicle mandates that these people keep talking about. When I was a shadow minister through the environment, I asked exactly where we were on building out the charging infrastructure and the power generation. Nowhere. We are nowhere near getting it done. They're plowing ahead with the zero-emission vehicle mandate because it sounds good. It's causing havoc in the industry. All the CEOs have asked for it to be scrapped. They push forward with it. They signed terrible contracts, and they've decimated the auto industry. They should be ashamed of themselves.
So through you, Mr. Speaker, to my honourable colleague, he had spoke about 3,000 jobs in Brampton lost. 1,000 jobs in Bright Drops lost, 4,000 jobs. Mr. Speaker, what is through you, what is the honourable members hearing on the ground, on the shop floor from our unions?
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
They're devastated. Unionized workers in the auto industry are devastated and terrified of what's coming down the pipe. I was speaking with GM Oshawa, and there's a factory in the U.S. that's being retooled right now, the Orion plant, that's going to manufacture light-duty vehicles. Guess what they manufacture in Oshawa? Light and heavy-duty vehicles. As a result of these tariffs, what the Prime Minister thinks is the best deal in the world, we could see light-duty vehicles being transferred from Oshawa to the Orion plant, which is going to start manufacturing Q1 2027. This is a decimation of the auto industry, and all they say, it's a trade war. Wait a minute. You guys ran on the platform that you could solve the trade war. Meanwhile, we are hollowing out the middle class, hollowing out the auto sector, and losing lots of good-paying unionized jobs.
What does he think about the negotiating talents that were supposed to be so extraordinary from the Prime Minister?
Caledon.
It's just another example of the abject failure of a Prime Minister who campaigned on the fact that I know the American president and I know how to get a deal, except all we see is the deal promised by July 21st hasn't happened, and every single time this Prime Minister goes and visits the American president, things actually get worse. We get more tariffs on more products. We get higher tariffs. It is the exact opposite of what he campaigned on. And as I said earlier, the most shocking and stunning thing is the Prime Minister has the audacity to stand in this place and brag about a 10% tariff on auto. He bragged about it. He said, we have the best deal in the world, as if he should be thanked and celebrated. As I said before, I spoke with the Unifor Skilled Trades Council. They have told me very clearly the auto industry in Canada at a 10% tariff is finished. And our Prime Minister stands there and brags about a 10% tariff. It's disgusting, Mr. Speaker.
Questions and comments. Question et commentaire. The honourable member for Essex.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you again to my honourable colleague for his intervention. Mr. Speaker, during his intervention, he had mentioned that he went to law school, and he mentioned the importance of contracts and actually reading the contracts. Mr. Speaker, through you, and then he also mentioned about the incompetence of the Liberals. Mr. Speaker, through you to the honourable member, in law school, I didn't go to law school, Mr. Speaker, but obviously my honourable colleague has. How important is it to read the contracts so we know exactly what's in contracts so that we can secure our workforce and ultimately our business and industry?
The honourable member for Dufferin-Caledon.
Look, I mean, a lawyer who would not read a contract on behalf of their client would face a massive lawsuit. and yet we have successive ministers who are signing billion-dollar contracts and not reading them. It is beyond negligence. It is gross negligence. It is malfeasance, and it is causing devastating impacts in the auto industry. They say there's a jobs guarantee. Can someone explain to me if there's a clause in these contracts that say there's a jobs guarantee? The jobs guarantee allowed them to lay off Stellantis, to lay off 3,000 workers in Brampton, when their total workforce at the time was a little over 8,000. They're allowed to lay off at least almost 50% of their workforce. That is no jobs guarantee. If I drafted a contract like that in first-year law school on behalf of my client, I can tell you this, my contracts professor would have given me an F, and that's what this government's got.
Member for Algonquin, Renfrew, Pembroke.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm pleased to rise on behalf of the hardworking exporters of Algonquin, Renfrew, Pembroke to speak to Bill C-13, an act to bring the United Kingdom into the Pacific Trade Deal. As Conservatives, we support free trade. We support this bill. What we do not support is Liberal incompetence. This bill is a testament to Liberal mismanagement. It's a cautionary tale for Canadians. It's a warning that the Liberals may not be the crack trade negotiating team they claim to be. They have failed our farmers, they have failed our permanent residents, and clearly they are failing to secure more free trade. We'll start with trade. Under Brian Mulroney, Canada negotiated the Canada-US Free Trade Deal and its successor, the North American Free Trade Agreement. During the decade of darkness, under Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin, Canada negotiated just 3 small deals with Israel, Costa Rica, and Chile. What followed was a decade of dynamism under Stephen Harper. And with Stephen Harper, Canada negotiated deals with Peru, Colombia, Jordan, Panama, Honduras, Korea, Ukraine, the 27 members of the European Union, and the 11 members of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Our Conservative Party built Canada into the freest trading nation on earth. Unfortunately, things began to change for freer trade after we left office, and the United States pulled out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Under Trudeau, free trade negotiations broke down with India. The deal Trudeau signed to replace NAFTA reduced free trade and even went so far as to ban the American Super Bowl commercials from airing in Canada. Once America's Republican Party moved away from the unwavering support for free trade, the regressive left saw their opportunity. The left has always bitterly opposed free trade. Older Canadians may remember the vicious attack ads the Liberal Party ran erasing Canada's border during free trade debates. Trudeau nearly derailed the Trans-Pacific Partnership in order to include new clauses in the agreement similar to the anti-economic development policies he imposed on Canada. But the worst was yet to come. After Putin launched his invasion of Ukraine, the Liberals forced that desperate nation to renegotiate their free trade deal with Canada. The Liberal goal was to impose carbon tariffs on Ukraine if the Ukrainians did not increase their own carbon tax to match Canada's. Forcing a country fighting for its very existence to renegotiate an existing deal was truly beyond the pale. This was a kind of diplomacy that would make Tony Soprano proud. Now, Madam Speaker, I can already hear my Liberal colleagues clenching their teeth, and I'm sure they want to jump to their feet and protest. They will tell us this is not the old Trudeau government. This is a new, improved Brookfield government. While Trudeau was a deplorable prime minister, at least he never ran on a promise to increase tariffs on Canadians. It's only been 11 months, but the collective amnesia about the current prime minister is shocking. The man from Brookfield spelled out his plan on the very first day of campaigning for the Liberal Party leadership. His plan is tariffs. He calls them carbon border adjustments, but that's clearly intended to mislead people into supporting tariffs. And here's how it works. The Prime Minister will dramatically increase the industrial carbon tax, and this will make Canadian industry less competitive against industries in our major trading partners, such as the US or the UK. In order for these companies to compete, the Prime Minister will impose carbon tariffs and call it a carbon competitiveness strategy. And that's why they reopened the Ukraine deal. That's likely why they can't get a bilateral deal with the United Kingdom. That's why we're all pretending that the United Kingdom is now a warm, sunny Pacific Island nation that's eligible to join the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And that's why during the middle of our recent federal election, the Prime Minister received a warm endorsement from President Trump. When the President wrote on Truth Social that he and the man from Goldman agreed on many things, we thought they meant he agreed on signing giant novelty decorations or using police as props for photo ops. What we should have realized is that they agree on using tariffs as a social engineering tool. The U.S. President believes tariffs can undo automation, while our Prime Minister thinks they can cool the planet. The simple truth is that all a tariff can do is hurt the economy. And the only way to make the damage to your economy worse is to use non-tariff trade barriers to free trade. Madam Speaker, as I said at the start, this bill is another example of Liberals failing to secure a trade deal. Thanks to Brexit, we had leverage over Britain. We had cards to play, yet we folded. The United Kingdom is keeping in place their non-tariff barriers on Canadian beef and pork. The UK claims our food safety system is unsafe. Japan, Australia, Malaysia, Mexico, and all the other partners of the Trans-Pacific Partnership all agree Canadian food is safe. The UK is supposed to agree to respect our food safety system when they join the partnership. Yet 2 years on, here we are, ratifying UK's entry, and the barriers remain in place. So what's this government's response? Well, they promise that if the UK continues to doing what it's always done, the government will write a stern letter, then launch a lengthy trade complaint process at the World Trade Organization. In the meantime, the UK producers will continue to sell millions of dollars of beef and pork while our farmers wait and wait. The only relief these farmers will find is in knowing that they are not in the softwood lumber business. It's clear this Brookfield government is treating our forestry industry as a card they hope to play to save their EV subsidies in Ontario and Quebec. The problem is this government's playing Go Fish while the rest of the world is playing high-stake poker. This might explain the shabby treatment shown to British retirees now living in Canada. Just as with our farmers, this government had leverage over our mother parliament. Our Prime Minister is burning up his carbon allowance, flying around the world looking for deals, the same way countless UK Prime Ministers have been doing since Brexit. And we had a golden opportunity to support people living in Canada, and the Liberals couldn't be bothered to try. For any Canadians unfamiliar with the issue, the UK has a public pension like ours. When British retiree moves abroad, they continue to receive their pension. If they live in the rebellious colonies to the south, their UK pension is indexed to inflation. If they live in the loyal Dominion of Canada, they receive a fixed amount from the day they first applied. This issue directly affects 100,000 UK retirees who live in Canada, but indirectly, it affects every Canadian. Each month, 100,000 of our neighbors, friends get a little poorer. Each month, they have less to spend buying Canadian beef for supper. Each month, they have a little less to donate to the local church. And instead of having free time to volunteer, UK pensioners, this is discrimination against people living in Canada, and it's an insult. The problem is the former Prime Minister thought Canada was a nation of colonizing Our new Prime Minister is an unabashed Anglophile, or as kids might say, he's a simp for Keir Starmer. Every country has its own shibboleths, the secret code words that allow fellow citizens to know if you're one of us. As a bilingual country, it's not about how you pronounce it, it's how you spell it. In Canada, we spell catalyze with a Z, and our Prime Minister spells it with an S. He's less a Manchurian candidate and more of a Manchester candidate. And he's all too happy to sell out UK pensioners living in Canada, to sell out our beef and pork farmers if it means a chance at knighthood. And the next time he gets together with his friends at Davos, they better all have him address him as Sir Brookfield. And I know some people might find that ridiculous, but it's more comforting than reality. The plain truth is that these Liberals are just incompetent with trade negotiations. 10 years without a softwood lumber deal. The trade deal with the U.S. Prime Minister promised he would have negotiated by mid-summer. The time Trudeau almost blew up the Trans-Pacific Partnership so he could insert some feminist language into a meaningless annex. That this bill is only at second reading is itself an example of Liberal incompetence on the trade file. And Canada needs free trade, but it finds itself in a trade war. But we need a government who truly believes in trade. We need a Conservative government, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Winnipeg North Centre? West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for her speech. I would like to point out that the supposition that Canada imposed a carbon tax on Ukraine from the Canadian press is demonstrably false. This was not imposed on Ukraine. Ukraine has had a carbon tax since 2011, and there was a clause that simply said they would cooperate. So will the member retract her false statement?
I wouldn't. The Honourable. Order. There's only one member I'm going to recognize now. It'll be the member for Algonquin-Brantford Pembroke.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the Ukraine had a carbon tax, but it was too low for the former Prime Minister Trudeau. Therefore, he imposed an additional tax so that it would be equal to ours. They already had one. He just made it worse.
Questions et commentaires. Comments, l'honorable député de.
The Honourable Member for Jonquière. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I listened to my colleague with great interest. She spoke about the government's record of failures, including on softwood lumber. But there's been an idea going around for some time that would give some breathing room to softwood lumber workers who are tariffed at a 50% rate every single month. And I haven't heard the Conservatives speak about this idea. Does my colleague think that it would be a good idea to support our forestry sector as they await a signed agreement?
Mr. Speaker, 10 years ago, we started campaigning to make sure the softwood lumber agreement would be in place. They haven't even considered putting it as part of the negotiations for the next North American USMCA. The truth is, this government doesn't want a forestry industry. We see that in all their UN declarations, the 30 by 30, which will become 50 by 50, land set aside where nobody can harvest anything. Mr. Speaker, it's time to face reality. The Liberals do not want trees cut down.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Member for Ponoka-Didsbury.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to thank my longtime colleague and friend for her excellent speech here in the House, telling Canadians exactly how it is here in Ottawa. And my question for her as a patriot is, how much longer does she think Canada can hold out as a sovereign nation before it becomes a subsidiary of Brookfield?
The Honourable Member for Algonquin-Renfrew Pembroke.
Whoa, for a minute, Mr. Speaker, I thought he was going to ask me how much longer I was going to stay in Parliament. Okay. So in terms of, well, actually, we don't know that Canada isn't a subsidiary. Already, the government has let over $1 billion a year to a consortium of companies to run CNL, our crown jewel in the nuclear laboratories. he's willing to sell that down without any Canadian participation. So my concern, my fellow Conservative, is that he's already sold us.
Questions and comments? Questions et commentaires. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. The member was actually factually incorrect on a number of accounts.
Number
one, Harper had nothing to do with the signing off of the Canada-Ukraine 1 deal. That was actually Justin Trudeau and the Minister of Foreign Affairs at the time. The European Union, the 27 countries, you had nothing to do with that either. That was actually a Liberal government that signed off on them, not to mention the other countries that she had mentioned, Madam Speaker, or Mr. Speaker. But the question I have for the member is, she's got to be a little bit somewhat nervous when you have the current leader of the Conservative Party looking for a riding to run in Ontario. Rumor has it that the member opposite might be stepping aside. Can she confirm to the House that she'll be running in the next federal election in the same riding?
Confirm.
The Honourable Member for Algonquin, Brentford, Pembroke, in 25 seconds or less.
My greatest fan that yes, I will be back. But, Mr. Speaker, the Liberals, they rewrite history. First, they tear down history, the statues, everything, and then they rewrite it so that it favors what their narrative is. And it's time that we went back to what really happened and we teach our children the genuine history of Canada.
Resuming debate.